Well, hello, everybody. This is Pastor Stephanie Haskins. I'm joined by our music director, Richard Schenk. And welcome to Niantic Community Church, where no matter who you are and no matter where you are on your life's journey, you're welcome here. We've been doing this resilience series where I've been talking to various folks in our community who have been really open about the challenges they face in their life. And last Sunday, when I made an announcement in worship, asking for someone to share their journey, some of their story with depression, Richard was right at the keyboard and he said, me. Well, afterwards, he said me. So he's here to share some of his journey with depression in the hope of helping anyone whom this might help. And speaking of help, this is not a substitute for medical advice. We always encourage folks, especially when it comes to mental health, to talk with their doctors and other professionals. This is Richard sharing his personal journey. Yours might look similar, it might look different. The point of this is to share so others don't feel quite so alone. So Richard, welcome. And so glad that you're here and you're taking time out of your schedule to do this. And I was wondering if you might share a high point and a low point from your journey with depression and what you learned from each of those points.
It would not be possible to say the low point because life is cycles that way. And I've lived a long life with a lot of really bright days and a lot of dark days. But the one that came to mind as far as a low point was in fact my college years. And I have recently come into some realizations about them that I never had. It took me decades to realize that the mix of challenges, influences, freedoms, and lack of freedoms were really playing havoc on me. But I did know that emotionally, even though I didn't understand what those were. And I had the opportunity to start counseling then. It's been a lifelong thing that I have gone to counseling on and off and had unfailingly good experiences with that. So I have not experienced psychiatric help or hospitalization or maybe a more clinical depression, but I have had this ongoing relationship with these wonderful people, counselors, and I like to think that some of God's miracles happen on the couch, so to speak. So in college, I sought out a counselor. This is poignant for me because some of you know my wife, and if not, I don't think she'd mind me sharing that her job at Connecticut College is, as Assistant Director of Student Services, is to help students find the resources they need. And those resources are really quite rich now. And I have wondered, were they at my college back, in the day? And I think not as much awareness about different learning styles. This year, I've become aware through Black Lives Matter of learning styles that may be associated with culture that have nothing to do with how smart you are. It's how you approach things, and things that I took for granted, I'm rethinking. So at my college, though, I was fortunate enough to know that I could go for counseling and had a wonderful counselor who helped me address the fact that I was a very religious person and I had certain expectations. And this person was a woman. She encouraged me not to think that God wanted me to grovel and feel sinful about myself all the time. And I'm sure she was just unlocking some of the sadness and freeing me up from that. But it stayed with me my whole life right away there. But in summary, those years are tough, I think, because they're transitional. I literally got sick to my stomach. I had to take a year off. I had gastrointestinal issues. Again, without an understanding what might be happening. And I had difficulty finishing up. I did go back for my senior year. So that was a low point. I don't know what more to say about that. But I'll move to a high point, which happens to be 2020. And some of you know that we have a pandemic and that 2020 is not considered a good year. And maybe it's a surprise, but staying at home surprised me. Having to work from home in the spring was sort of helpful. Maybe I'm an introvert, maybe I'm an extrovert, but maybe I needed more time to myself because it was freeing to stay home and have a little more control over my schedule. And some of the things I found were how much I love to write music. That wasn't a surprise. How much I do like to be alone, and how much I like to get out in nature. Um, and even during that time period, I developed some medical issues that needed help, and that encouraged me, along with my concerns about COVID and my age and my demographic as a male that placed me in some higher risk for COVID, um, that I felt I could tackle getting back to exercise that I loved, that I had put aside. Just being so busy, I would just say to myself every day, I would literally pack a duffel bag with exercise clothes and never unpack it and go through it every day. And a voice in my head said, well, why are you packing it? Because, I wasn't being realistic. So I had time to be more realistic and rediscover how much I love to run and bike and swim. Um, and so it's been a really good year. And one of the reasons I offered to talk to Stephanie is that only in retrospect I realized that all of that started not with the COVID and the pandemic, but an interaction with my GP, my family doctor, who said, asked me how I felt using the antidepressant that I was on. And I felt lethargic, even though it seemed to help me with my moods. It seemed to stabilize. And we made a switch. We made a switch to a different antidepressant, which worked much better for me. And I'm not a clinician to say what that means, but I've done enough reading to know that I'm not alone in that. That you might say, oh, antidepressants don't work for me. And you might say counseling doesn't work for me. But sometimes the right counselor or the right switch in medication is just a little bit of trial and error there. I think that's a reasonable summary. Mm-hmm. But it led to a kind of happy place in my life this year.
I'm glad someone's having a good year, Richard.
Is it okay to do that? I mean,
yeah, I think it goes back to the idea that God doesn't want us to be miserable if we can help it. So, and that kind of segues into my next question, which is that a lot of people experience a spiritual component of depression, meaning that they may not feel that God is present for them or that they're not present to God. And I wondered if you had how you might relate your faith journey to your journey with depression.
Both integral, but not in the way you described, because what had to get unpacked for me is I had a difficult family situation that was kind of based on my father's own traumatic youth and him trying to stabilize ours towards what he called normal. I think it was always so a 50s thing, let's just stay normal. And of course, the 50s set up the 60s to upturn the, what's the word? Upturn the apple cart? Upset the apple cart. But at any rate, it took a while for me to realize that my family history was stormy. And of course it came through, despite my father's best intentions and my mother's best intentions. There were issues that I won't go into. But what I did see first was these mood swings and anger and anxiety. So a level of emotions that didn't seem to have a place. And what I discovered spiritually in a way that actually was unique in my family at the time was that that God was on my side. And that has never changed. There have been lows, but the spiritual dimension of my lows is the thing that kept me alive was believing that God was on my side. I do think that it's easier with the privileges I have in society as a white male with a great education, great schools, great families supporting me. It's easier to feel that God is on my side because it kind of feels like society is on my side. However, with privileges comes other kinds of pains, other kinds of expectations. And I would use as an example that's both literal for me and figurative, which is that when you're in love, it's a privilege to be in love and to have somebody who finds you and that you find. And then it's the hardest thing in the world sometimes when you're falling out of love and the breakup is not mutual. And that was part of my rocky path. But that wasn't my point as much as the fact that with whatever we're handed in life, whether we have more opportunity or less, we have challenges with them that are very real for us and not the same as what they might be for somebody else. But I do want to be realistic. I like to smile and I like to be encouraging, and I do hope that all of this is helpful to somebody. I have music as such an outlet for me, and it's both my best response to the world and my escape from the world. I think it can be both. It's what I want to do with my life, and I'd love it if my music helps other people worship, helps other people live, helps other people smile. How in my job at the college, it helps them dance all day long. I do that every day. Being helpful with my music is wonderful. But composing is also escaping into a world that I create, because there's something that's not totally safe about the other world. And I love being in that world too. So I'd prefer to speak through music than words. But if my words here today help, that would be great. But I do want to be realistic and say that I have a point probably every day where I think life is painful. This just hurts. And it's about emotions and expectations. And there's also the possibility that there's more things for me to learn. That's what I believe. And I think Stephanie does too, because I find the sermon so encouraging when we're aware of our journey. Faith is a journey. It's not a one-time decision.
Richard, thank you. And I wanted to ask about that moment every day that's painful, and how do you attend to that? I think that might be really helpful.
The first step is to accept that feeling. That helps so much. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be tired. It's good for me to know my blessings. Spirituality for me is about gratitude. And that rights the ship. It doesn't say I'm wrong for feeling some pain, but it helps me realize that's the bright lights and the darker days. They go together, kind of eventually. And I like being older, having more perspective on that sadness and those moments of pain. Because I've lived through some that have and come out the other side, and that I know enough about life to know that it's a challenge, and we're facing challenges in whatever situation we're in, but always people have it worse than me. I don't know about what all psychologists would say the motivation, but that's tremendous for me, just to be grateful and realize, wow, look at how full my glass is, you know. But I think the first thing is just accepting that there's some degree of pain, and not to panic about that. Because to me, a lot of depression has been about anger that got turned into furious activity in some way. And the ability to be calm is huge. I also don't know how I deal with it every day, but that's what I think I do.
That's all we can do. I mean, I think about when I teach centering prayer, we always say the welcoming prayer beforehand, and the opening phrase is welcome, 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 and it's that same idea of, which I think in maybe some Buddhist traditions is more common, right? But just welcoming whatever is washing up on our shore. But the idea is that we don't have to fight anything, and it is a practice to just allow the things that are arising to arise. I think that's so beautiful. I really like that. And you've already said things that are really helpful, but I thought in a more specific and direct way, if there's something if there's something that you want to say to anyone who is struggling with depression in one shape or form, or has a loved one who is struggling with depression. And it doesn't have to be like, Richard's list of things to do. Just a message from the heart, or anything you'd like to say about that.
Wow, I will probably think of some things later.
Yeah.
Might even write a song about it later.
Oh, I look forward to that.
The quote that I think I used it twice already is actually from a song that I just wrote. That life is full of brighter lights and darker days. I think this is what comes to mind. I don't know if it's my best answer, but what comes to mind is that what I found with medication for antidepressants, and I am on an antidepressant that I find really helpful. It's not a high dose, but it's enough to change, stabilize me. I guess that's the word. And I think of those medications as kind of reducing the amount of emotions at the extremes in your life. And so I hope this is encouraging, but I think it's okay to do that. There's a time in your life where you maybe don't need to get the whole range. What you need is that center that's a little more stable. And then maybe you'll start to miss those brighter colors and those darker colors, and you're ready for more, and there can be an adjustment. And there's been times for me when I'm not on an antidepressant. And, but the ability to say, oh, I need a little help. That's okay. You need a little help.
Mm-hmm. Richard, I want to thank you for your honesty, vulnerability, openness, and your beautiful heart in sharing that with us. It's such a gift. And you're such a gift to me and to this community. And I want to offer you the chance to say any parting words.
I asked you at the beginning of the interview if we were going to edit it or not. And my usual composing thing is to throw out lots and lots of ideas and go through them all and then winnow them down. And a couple times lately, I have woken up with a song in my head, a more complete song. And I actually shared that with the congregation, the waltz for the two violins. It was almost completely in my head. And it just happened again with a song that I'm hoping to make a choir song, or at least a vocal song. And I'll just say the words. Sun does not sleep beyond the stars, but goes on shining from afar. So the love that holds us dear can cast away our every fear. God has spoken in our time, open hearts and welcome. Nor do I throw a stone, but give what we receive. Merciful is the power of God. The music's better than the words, so I'll let you hear that later.
Well, if that's true, that's true. That's amazing. That's so beautiful. Richard, thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. I'm sure we'll do another resilience interview soon. But for the time being, God bless and keep you always.